It's go time, friends. Come on, Rockfin. All right. Come on, Rumble. Let's do the thing. Let's go.
Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right, guys. It is Friday. The weekend is officially here. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays and Fridays, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. Are you excited for the weekend? Or are you as pumped as I am? I always get excited for the weekend. I'm going to go ahead and say hello to people in the chat, and then we'll go ahead and dive in. We have some interesting stories to talk about. What's going on? Ashura says, let's get to 51K, please. Slow down, Ashura. I just got here. What's up? Miguel says, peace. Greetings. Hannah says, AOC looks silly in that picture. That picture is from... I think that picture is from her GQ magazine when she had the interview in GQ. I think that's what that's from. What's going on? ACAB says hello to Ashura and Miguel. Greetings. Ilhanner says hello to Miguel. Miguel, you popular tonight? Greetings. Bryce says happy Friday, everyone. Sup and fam. What's going on, Dabby Dabs? Whoop, whoop. How's it going, Sabby fam? Don't forget to show that like button some love. Shout out to Lorez says, hi, Sabrina, Eric, and Sabby fam. Coverage of fires yesterday. Congrats again on 50K. Thank you so much. Smash the like, y'all. That Jacobin article is pure cringe. Nick and CJ did a great job calling out the bull. Is it a bull? Yeah, bull. Greetings, Volvo says, hey. Shout out to Mark says, Miss 50K Sabby. What's up, Mark? Shout out to Dwayne, who's a Sabby member, says, howdy, y'all. Greetings, Lana says, hey, Sabby. Hi, all. Shout out to Notori sends a wave. Greetings, comrade Kitty. Sends a kitty. What's going on? Randy says, good evening, Sabby comrades. Shout out to Red says, hi, Sabby. Greetings, Mastermind says, hello, fam. Shout out to Miguel says, hi, or excuse me, Michael says, hi, everyone. Greetings, Sean says, yeah. Shout out to V says, right on time. Just turn the machine on. Greetings, Chris says, so Cenk has seen the light. Interesting. Yes. We're going to get into that story tonight. Like, actually, one of you guys sent me this and said, you need to see this. So that's actually why I'm covering this tonight. But yeah. We're going to get there. Shout out to Ravina, who's a Sabby member, says hello to Dwayne, Bryce, and Notori, and apparently everyone else. Greetings, CBC voters, says happy Friday, Sabby. Kim says happy Friday, everyone. Eric says, what's up, comrades? What's up with the Obama love letters? Jimmy did a hilarious phone sketch about it. I don't know, man. Apparently, Obama wrote like some love letters, I guess, back in the 80s or something. And they were saying that in one of those letters, he was basically admitting that he thinks about men or something like that. I don't know. I don't care what people do in the bedroom. Shout out to Eric T. Red, who's a Sabby member, says, hi, Friday peeps. And greetings, Danny says, Cenk grills Bernie, then ate him some steak sauce. Oh, ate him with some steak sauce. You guys are funny. You guys are funny. Oh man. Okay. And shout out to Ali says happy weekend, Sabby and chat. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to give a shout out to Sabby patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. Really do appreciate it. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: ultimate, Sabinators. There's also Sabsters, Sabbies, and also members. Thank you guys so much. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the screen on the bottom of the ticker there. And I want to give a shout out to a new Sabby patron. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Kevin Howard. Whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop. Kevin, has anyone ever said your name like that? I don't know. Kevin Howard. All right. What are we talking about tonight, ladies and gentlemen? Let me go ahead and share that thumbnail. Let's get all excited with it. Lean with it. Rock with it. I don't know if you guys remember that song. The radio definitely overplayed that song. Lean with it. Rock with it. Lean with it. That was back when everyone was making the dance songs, like telling you to do a dance. Okay, tonight we are discussing Cenk Uygur grills Bernie. Yikes. It's finally all coming out, guys. It's finally all coming out. We're also going to discuss Vivek Ramaswamy town hall. Let me pause for a second. I think I'm going to do this. I'm going to give a shout out to News Nation. News Nation, they're kind of, I guess they're supposed to be middle of the road news media. So like they will present both sides. So they'll present Republican side, Democrat side, etc. But I got to give a shout out to them because honestly, when it comes to these town halls, they have been giving people town halls that mainstream media is not giving a town hall to. They gave a town hall to RFK Jr., mainstream media, not giving him a town hall. And their views, like people are watching these town halls, they're getting hundreds of thousands of views. So shout out to News Nation for doing the damn thing. Anywho, we are also going to discuss Jacobin lies about AOC and the squad. We're going to get into that terrible, terrible article written by Bronco. And we're also going to discuss the Netherlands recession. Yes, it is here. We have actually reached that point. Quick shout out to Colin, who just became a member. Let's give Colin a big whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop. Lean with it, rock with it. All right, let's go ahead and get started with our first story. If you have not heard, it is official that the Netherlands has just announced that they have officially entered a recession. Now, this comes I believe it like 2 months ago when I covered that Germany announced that they were entering a recession. And now we have the Netherlands. And what's interesting about the Netherlands, there's something I'm going to show you in reference to where they sit globally, in reference to their economy and their wealth. So this is very interesting. Germany had the fourth largest economy in the world. They entered a recession, and now we have the Netherlands. And I think people need to pay attention to what's happening here. So let's go ahead and start with this article. And then I have a couple of clips that I want to show you as well. The Dutch economy has slid into recession as inflation and interest rates hit exports and spending. Let's go ahead and dive in. It's a pretty short article here by AP. The Netherlands has fallen into a recession after exports and household spending fell back amid rising interest rates intended to rein in inflation. The country's statistics office reported Wednesday. The economy declined by 0.3% in the second quarter after shrinking 0.4% in the first 3 months of the year, Statistics Netherlands reported. The Netherlands, a small nation that has long punched above its weight in global trade, is now treading water after its robust rebound following the pandemic, says the Statistics Office chief economist Peter Hein van Mulligen. After the pandemic, The Dutch economy recovered much quicker and stronger than the rest of Europe. In the last year, that has turned around. So, what is happening with the Netherlands? Why are they entering a recession right now? Well, first, I want to go back to what happened to the Netherlands 10 months ago when they were facing an energy crisis. And there were actually households that decided to cut themselves off from gas completely. Let's go ahead and get into this clip here from Al Jazeera.
The only gas Wilma Marais still uses is for the tea lights, used for her improvised stove. The terracotta pots retain heat, which helps keep her a little warmer as the colder weather approaches. The shop owner decided to have her gas cut off after her bill doubled to $345 a month, with a warning from her provider that it could reach $700.
Nou, de winkel die zet heel weinig om.
My shop has hardly any income. I lost customers during the COVID-19 pandemic, and now inflation is so high people don't have money to buy children's clothes. So my income has really dropped below minimum. I know I can't pay these high energy bills.
Let's pause here for a second. This was also happening to people here in Massachusetts, those that had I forget the name of the company. I don't have them because we have propane. I forget the name of the company. But anyway, this was happening to people in Massachusetts too, where people were getting $500 electric bills during the winter. Remember, this was 10 months ago in the Netherlands, but people were getting $500, $600 electric bills, and there was nothing they could do because natural gas, they're the ones that is a large provider for people here in Massachusetts. And basically people that lived in apartments, when they would confront their landlords or their property managers, they would tell them like, why the heck is my utility bill, my gas bill, all of a sudden $500 and I live in a 1-bedroom apartment. I'm not here from like 8 to 5 during the day because I'm at work. Why is my bill so high? Those residents were told that there was nothing that the property managers could do about it because it was National Grid. Sorry, I said natural gas. National Grid. They said it was National Grid's fault. That's where it comes from. So there was nothing the apartment complexes could do about it. So there were people, $500 in a 1-bedroom apartment and you're not even there half the day. It's a lot. Again, this is all going into this issue with Russia and Ukraine and, of course, inflation. Everything went up. Let's continue.
While it's getting colder in her house behind these doors, millions of chrysanthemums are thriving in warm temperatures. But greenhouse farmers depend on gas to continue operating during winter. And many have decided to stop growing flowers and vegetables in the next few months, something that could seriously affect Dutch exports.
Normally, if we have like every year like 10% extra cost, it's not a problem, but it's now like 10 times more than 2 years ago. It's crazy. In this way, if nobody can survive, no company, no people with a household, nobody.
With new techniques that use less fossil fuels, Wouter Duivenstein hopes to be able to continue his business, although he's worried that the prices of flowers will climb so high that demand will dry up.
The Dutch pay twice as much for gas as other Europeans due to hefty energy tax and their dependence on gas to generate electricity.
So did you guys hear that? That the Dutch actually pay twice as much for gas than other European countries. So that's problem number one. And then problem number two was obviously the inflation.
And while other EU members have kept their energy prices, the Dutch government is being accused of doing too little, too late.
Protesters carrying flags upside down booed the royal family after King Willem-Alexander delivered his annual budget address, promising a price cap on energy and $18 billion to compensate poor families. A recent survey suggests that 7 in 10 Dutch citizens have lost trust in the government.
If you get problems of whether you can pay your food and energy, because that's what we're talking about. Even if they work full-time, if they can still pay the basic necessities, then that's the best way of eroding trust in your own government.
Opposition parties say that the government's aid package has not been thought through and fear it won't be enough to keep the country warm this winter, and that plans to support entrepreneurs to keep their businesses running are too vague and have come too late. Step fasten, Al Jazeera, Hoek van Holland, the Netherlands.
So 10 months ago, the Netherlands had to deal with the energy crisis. So they already had that issue. Now they've entered a recession. But there's something that I noticed. And when we look at countries in reference to total wealth, I decided to look this up because I was just curious to see how wealthy is the Netherlands. And I want to show you something. If we look at this table here, these are countries by wealth. Okay? Watch this. So number one is the US, US. Then when we get to Europe, you'll see China. Then we get to Asia Pacific, Japan, Germany, UK, France, India. So we're rounding out the top 10 with South Korea. That being said, the Netherlands is number 14. The Netherlands is the 17th largest in the world, the economy. That was according to the World Bank. So it's not like the Netherlands is at the bottom of the list. They're not at the top of the list, but still 17th largest economy in the world. So that makes you wonder what happened? Where did all that money go? What did they do with all the wealth? Why are they having this struggle and entering this recession? I said the same thing with Germany, fourth largest economy in the world, and they still entered this recession. But as much as we bring up recessions, oftentimes we're not told how you can prevent one. And I think you need to hear that. Now, the Netherlands, what I think is really important is that we are seeing countries that are a part of the West go into a recession. And over again, for the past year and a half, I've listened to mainstream media tell us the United States is not going into a recession. But these are our allies. It's happening to Germany. It is now happening to the Netherlands. And you'll constantly hear all of these economists and mainstream media pundits announce when someone's going into a recession, when someone's coming out of a recession, but I never hear them tell you how to prevent one. Second Thought actually did just that. And I think you're going to want to hear this. How do you prevent going into a recession? Listen to this.
Planned economy. With a planned economy, we can control more industries democratically, produce in line with our needs, not randomly having every company producing as much as possible, which not only destroys the livability of our planet, but crashes the economy when profits don't catch up. Instead of relying on profit to guide our investments, we could simply invest in the things we want to see happen, with democratically run financial institutions instead of privately controlled banks that only follow the logic of growth to assess whether something is worth doing. Alternatively, think of something like a mutual aid network today. Mutual aid.
Pause right there. That's music to my ears when I heard those words, a mutual aid network. So Second Thought is explaining that what we don't have is a planned economy. So he said, instead of us relying on banks to basically make regulations, what if all of these companies actually had a democratic process instead of us relying on the banks? Let's go on a little bit here, because I think this is really important for people to hear. People continue to tell me we can't mutual aid our way out of this. We can't just only do mutual aid. We can't do these things. Listen to this.
To see happen, with democratically run financial institutions instead of privately controlled banks that only follow the logic of growth to assess whether something is worth doing. Alternatively, think of something like a mutual aid network today. Mutual aid doesn't do for GDP. GDP doesn't have any way of measuring something that's done freely. It just doesn't consider it to exist. Since mutual aid networks are often just people working together to improve their lives, providing each other with services and sometimes goods, usually without money changing hands, as long as those things remain insular to the collective, life gets better without GDP moving an inch.
Did everybody just hear that? life gets better without GDP moving an inch. Because when they assess the economy mainly by GDP. And there have been times when GDP has actually been really great for the US, but economically, people are not doing great. And we've talked about this oftentimes, like Donald Trump would talk about this, Biden would talk about this, Obama would talk about this. They say the GDP is doing great. But people were still struggling to find jobs. People still were making $7.25 an hour, federal minimum wage. It seems like that's the only thing they would talk about was GDP, not what's happening in people's actual lives. Let's continue.
Economies don't need growth for life to be good or for life to improve. When the motivation for doing stuff is democratic will, not profit, life gets better without some rich guy's bank account getting bigger.
There's a difference between doing good for the people, for your community, and making a profit. And unfortunately, in our society, it's almost like everything is profit driven. Everything. Look at Big Pharma, for example. Why don't we have healthcare for everybody in this country, right? Because that's not profitable for Big Pharma. It's just the reality. They need to charge for medication so that they can make a profit. So you have to think about these kinds of things. And if we live in a society that is always profit driven, sometimes it can be hard to tell if people are actually doing anything for the greater good or they're just doing it to make a profit. When you look at something like mutual aid, there's no profit, no financial profit. So you're helping people, you're feeding people, you're clothing people within the community. You're not making any money off of that. So how do you know the difference? How do you tell if the job that's being done is being done just for profit or if it's being done for the greater good? And sometimes the lines can be blurred.
It's the exact opposite of austerity and recessions. It's abundance for all, even in the midst of bad numbers. And I get that this is abstract. The bottom line is that when capitalists aren't in charge, we don't need to satisfy their needs before societies, or hope that the two coincide. It's actually really simple. People before profits.
There you go. The important thing is to get the capitalists out of the way. As long as they're in charge, as long as they have control, it's never going to be great for everyone. There's always going to be people at the bottom. There's always going to be people without jobs. There's always going to be people without health care because we live in a capitalist system. But imagine, instead of us having one person at the top at all these different companies, what if everybody was on equal playing field? Instead of this top bottom structure that we have, a lot of organizations have, what if it was horizontal? That's the difference between mutual aid and charity, by the way. This is why I don't donate to charity organizations. I told you guys last night about the Red Cross. Charities have a top-down structure. Mutual aid networks have a horizontal structure. Everybody on the same page. Everybody is at the same level. And if you're going to go that far, well, then why not start worker co-ops? Why not start worker co-ops so that everybody owns a piece of the company and a fair share of it, not one person owning the company and everybody working for that one person? Because most of the time, when there is one that is in charge, their salary, their profit is not going to be the same as the people who are below them. There's no capitalism without exploitation. And this is why I continue to say that people who are billionaires didn't get there in an honest way. You don't become a billionaire by not exploiting people. You exploited someone along the way to get there. How do you prevent recessions? You put people before profits. Pass this on to people. We need to talk about prevention. A lot of times we talk about the problem. Sometimes we talk about a possible response to the problem. But I think we need to start focusing more on prevention.
Now, does this mean no more crises? No, definitely not. Another global pandemic, a massive drought, or a war can all still cause problems. Some things just can't be avoided entirely. That's the reality of life. We can prepare, but we can't always prevent. That said, within a socialist framework, the consequences don't have to be so bad, because the first priority isn't company profits. An economy that prioritizes human well-being would simply continue to do so even in the midst of a crisis, unlike a growth economy which is ready to sacrifice collective good for a small group of people's numbers to look better. A crisis can be weathered, instead of becoming an excuse to cut social services and grow the capitalist share of the pie, like what happens after every crisis in this decaying neoliberal era. I know this might sound utopian, but it's really not. It's necessary. It's common sense. We cannot keep chasing infinite growth on a planet with finite resources. And we cannot keep punishing average people for the greed of a few capitalists. We can get rid of recessions. Life can be better for all of us.
Second thought, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to see the full video, because it's actually a 19-minute video, I want to put this back up here really quick to show you. It's called The Truth About Recessions. Check that out when you have some time. Second thought. But yeah, the Netherlands is officially in a recession. I'm going to go to some of the comments here in the chat. Thank you for the super chat, M. Smith. We are already in a recession. Our government is lying. There are more homeless people now than ever. Just walk the streets of any city. I agree. They're always afraid to say the R word. Have you noticed that? I think they're afraid that people will panic. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. Co-op ownership of manufacturing and supply chains. There you go. You're speaking my language. You're speaking my language, rather, Roger. I'm telling you, we got to do something different. All right. We're going to go into our next story here, and this is about AOC and the squad. Trying to figure out where do I even want to begin. But we're going there. There was an article written by Jacobin, or in Jacobin, written by Branko, and he is basically trying to make the case that AOC and the squad have actually had a long list of accomplishments. It's really funny. Like, at first I'm like, is this a parody? Is this a joke? Seriously? But before I get into this article, I want to explain to you why this is being done. You have these politicians, all right, they were part of Justice Democrats. But when you had this strategy of progressives going into the Democratic Party, well, that requires a couple of things, right? Number one, you have to have the candidates. They found the people. Two, you got to get the grassroots base. They were able to find that and get that. But how do you keep the brand and the momentum going? You have to have a media apparatus to support you. So when it comes to the squad members, the media apparatus that supports them is outlets like Jacobin, TYT, DSA. You have to have the media. If they don't have any sort of media, it's easy for them to fade away. They're not relevant anymore. People forget about them. Next thing you know, they're not even in office anymore. So the way that they continue to keep the brand of the squad going is through the media. Media outlets like Jacobin, So that's why you see this article coming out now, and you know that a lot of people have been angry with the squad, particularly over breaking the strike between the railroad workers or preventing them from being able to go on strike, the way that they voted on other legislation, funding Ukraine, not forcing the vote for Medicare for all. A lot of people are angry with them. That's where the media apparatus comes in to defend them. That is why this article was written, because of the disappointment and disapproval of the squad within the past year and a half. So let's go ahead and get into it. AOC and the squad's list of left-wing accomplishments is quite long. See, already in the title, you know, here comes the lie. This is how desperate they are now that they've gotten this. This is ridiculous. They're exaggerating. Let's jump in here. As with any elected official, AOC and the squad should be criticized when needed. So first of all, I want to point out something that they're doing, which a lot of people do. AOC is a part of the squad. Notice how a lot of times these media outlets, they separate her name from the rest of the group. It's not AOC and the squad. Okay, this is not Josie and the Pussycats. It's the squad, which she is a part of. Now, why do they do that? Because I really believe that they are really grooming AOC to be the next Nancy Pelosi. I believe there's a reason why they single out her name from the other squad members. They don't say Rashida Tlaib in the squad. They don't say Jamal Bowman in the squad. They say AOC in the squad. Let's continue. But left-wing vitriol is unwarranted. It ignores the squad's many progressive accomplishments and their legislation's aid to activist campaigns. Activist campaigns. Look at the vocabulary, guys. The exaggeration, many accomplishments they've supposedly had. And again, whose picture do they put up? AOC. Do you see a picture of the squad here? No, it's just her. AOC is the Beyonce of the squad. If the squad was Destiny's Child, AOC is the Beyonce. She's just waiting for her solo career. Let's go on. It's tough being a member of the squad these days. Once the darlings of the American left, the group of progressive and socialist House members that includes AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Jamal Bowman, and others are as likely to be savage these days from the left as they are from the right. Popular YouTube commentators regularly denounce them as sellouts. They're talking about Jimmy Dore, right? Wasn't Jimmy the first one to say that? They don't know who I am. Notice how he refers to them as the group of progressive and socialists. They are not socialists. I wish people would stop saying this. They're not socialists. Let's continue. Popular YouTube commentators regularly denounce them as sellouts. Protesters interrupt their meetings, calling them warmongers. They're talking about people like Jose. And even committed socialists question what the point of the squad has been. The lion's share of this year has been trained on AOC, who's faced relentless criticism since winning office from all sides, sometimes over substantive issues, once failing to show up for the Amazon union rally, casting a vote that denied railroad workers the ability to strike, and sometimes over remarkably petty ones. Consolatory rhetoric, the positioning of her hands while being arrested. Much of this was crystallized in a recent critical analysis of AOC's record in the New York Magazine by Freddie DeBauer, who charged she has drifted from radical outsider to establishment liberal. So let me tell you, that article that Freddie DeBoer wrote, that has raised a lot of flags. So you've seen this guy on what? 3 different shows by now. He was on Katie's show. He was on Bad Faith. He was on Crystal and Kyle's show. You know, it's like, let's go do damage control. That article that Freddie DeBoer wrote was 100% legit. Everything that he said in that article was true. So here comes Jacobin. Again, that's the media apparatus that's going to support the squad. Here comes Jacobin to come in and play defense because that article went out. And when that article went out, I think a call went out. Got to come do damage control for the squad. Too many people are noticing this article and reading this article. So here's the damage control. So it goes on to say, but this is hard to square with both a closer analysis of AOC and the squad's record. Again, notice how they continue to separate AOC from the squad when she is a part of the squad. And with the picture painted by progressive groups and unions that work with them, have they occasionally fallen short? Sure. But the reality of the squad's accomplishments and movement importance is far more positive than the one-dimensional gloomy narrative that has become popular in some corners of the left. Let's get into it. A tremendous win. First, there's lawmaking. AOC legislative record is not nearly as barren as her detractors have it. Much like Bernie, the Congresswoman has been able to sneak through the cumbersome legislative process by putting forward amendments to larger bills. For example, one successful 2019 amendment cut $5 million from the DEA budget and redirected it to treatment programs for the opioid crisis. Let me pause here for a second. What's more significant? Cutting $5 million from the DEA and putting the money towards treatment programs for the opioid crisis, or giving everybody health care so that you can take care of the opioid crisis? You see the difference? We wouldn't have had an opioid crisis in this country if we had health care for everyone in this country, because then Big Pharma wouldn't have been able to make the profits that they made off of those opioids that they prescribed those patients. You see the difference? That's a Band-Aid. Let me continue. A year later, she managed to get her repeal of the 1998 Fair Cloth Amendment passed through the House, a landmark vote and a longtime priority for affordable housing advocates, given the Bill Clinton era's measures effective ban on new public housing construction. Affordable housing is a grift. I've covered this multiple times before on the show. When they say that they're putting in affordable housing units, a lot of times, first of all, it's not even affordable for a lot of people that are working class. And then 2, they're privatizing these places. There's profit to be made there. Affordable housing is a grift. It's a scam. I'm trying to tell you. Let me continue. Another from 2022 mandated the Pentagon study the therapeutic uses of MDMA and hallucinogens. What do those have to do with the policies that the squad ran on and the principles that are a part of DSA and Justice Democrats? You see, people aren't mad because of these things, these examples that Bronco pointed out. People are mad because the squad is not being aggressive and pushing back against the Democrat establishment on those democratic socialist issues that were a part of their campaign, and that's a part of DSA and a part of Justice Democrats. That's why people are mad at them. He's just picking out stuff just to be like, oh, let me tell you why you shouldn't be upset with them. This has nothing to do with the principles. Let's continue. Sometimes AOC and the squad have made contributions by blocking legislation instead of passing it. Every time that they did this, and we've gone over this on the show as well, it was when they already got approval to do so. When they already knew that it wasn't going to pass. So it was okay for them to block it. Boy, I tell you. Again, notice separating AOC from the squad. Sean Vitka, policy counsel for Demand Progress, told Jacobin the squad and particularly Representative Tlaib were instrumental in a major 2019 victory against mass surveillance when they forced through the end of the Patriot Act Sections 215. The controversial provision had allowed the warrantless collection of a broad swath of business records. Everything from banking and library history to medical records, and most controversially, phone metadata, and drew particular outrage when the Edward Snowden leaks revealed just how badly it was going to be used against Americans. Okay. What does that have to do with any of the principles and policies that they ran on? Let's continue. Let's jump ahead. Boy, I tell you, that's still the Patriot Act. Anti-imperialist assist. Critics have pointed to AOC and the rest of the squad's support for continual military aid to Ukraine to charge their counterfeit anti-imperialists or even war hawks. But important as it is, the Ukraine war is not the only pressing foreign policy issue. You see what he's trying to do? I don't remember us ever saying it was the only pressing foreign policy issue. But what he's trying to do right now is he's trying to say, well, there's other foreign policy matters that they also have been involved in, yada, yada, so that you don't take away, you don't pay attention to the fact that they supported the funding going to Ukraine. He's not even condemning that. He's not even condemning them voting for the legislation to send the money to Ukraine. He's not even condemning it. Let's go on. Take Latin America, for instance. AOC was, after Omar, the second member of Congress to declare the 2019 Bolivian coup what it was, a coup, beating even Sanders by a couple of hours and staking out a position that's somehow still a minority opinion in U.S. politics. In fact, she went further, introducing an amendment banning the transfer of weapons and crowd control equipment to the coup regime, language that made it into the bill that passed in the House. Let me mention something here. Latin America, right? Latin America? Okay. We've pointed this out before on the show that when it comes to legislation, AOC usually supports legislation that helps out her people. We've talked about this before. Okay. She quick to speak up for those issues. This is why you'll hear her speak up in reference to immigration. You'll hear her speak up in reference to the coup in Latin America, because again, those are her people. You won't see her speak up for some of these other issues that affect other groups. Where was AOC when the protesters outside of the Met Gala were getting beaten up by the police? And they were saying defund the police. AOC was inside the Met Gala. Where's she on that issue? Why is it that only Cori Bush seems to be the one who wants to say defund the police, and they've silenced her and stopped her from saying that? Where is she on that issue? Think about it. And two, saying that you're against something, speaking something, and doing something are two different things. Let me continue. She's been similarly out front when it comes to Colombia, where leftist President Gustavo Petro has been struggling to enact his agenda amid entrenched opposition, a divided Congress, and a drug-fueled violence. Again, her people. Her people. She don't even support. Let me be clear. Did you guys know, and this was in an article, did you guys know she don't even support reparations? She don't even support reparations for African-American descendants of slavery. When she was asked about this in an interview, she said, no, she don't support it. But she support the measures for her people. That's the point I'm trying to get across to you guys. Let me continue. Let's go to the next one. Boy, I tell you, that's still about Colombia. Let's move on. By the way, this is all Latin America, okay? AOC, Latin America, Peru, Colombia. Okay. Oh, I thought I skipped. Did I skip over? Okay. Upside, inside out. AOC and the squad are uniquely responsive to unions and outside groups, according to those who have worked with them. AOC herself, in her first few weeks of office, reached out to me and came to my office for a meeting. She's the only member of Congress who's ever done that. Now, that's coming from Flight Attendant CWA President Sarah Nelson. Let me tell you what this is all about. Because there's rumblings that Sarah Nelson might run for office. Okay. So it's important that you understand who the message is coming from and why they're saying what they're saying. And two, why are we going all the way back to AOC's first weeks in office? You got to go all the way back to the beginning because of how bad they've been. We've always given AOC credit for what she did when she first came in, protesting Nancy Pelosi's office. We've always given her credit for that. Where we do not give her credit and support is how she fell off the cliff after that. Let's continue. She was here for 2 hours talking through issues, trying to learn what was important to us, Nelson adds. AOC has solicited information from and worked with the union to try to ensure its priorities were represented through the Federal Aviation Authority's reauthorization process. Again, that was in the beginning. Food and Water Watch criticized AOC's Green New Deal resolution at the time for failing to eliminate fossil fuels directly. Criticism that was met with the policy response. After hearing feedback from us, she introduced the Fracking Ban Act. Not everyone who supported the Green New Deal was willing to take on fossil fuels in the way that she did. But none of that matters now or is of any importance because she is endorsing and supporting Joe Biden, who is still fracking the damn world. Joe Biden, who approved the Willow Project, that was recent. And she's supporting him, none of the other candidates that actually stand for these environmental protection issues. None of this matters. You're supporting the person who is not against the fracking and is still doing the fracking. Then your support of that Fracking Ban Act back then doesn't mean anything right now, because you should be supporting the candidate who is not for fracking, not the candidate who is for it and is still doing it. Let me continue. AOC has worked with progressive organizations on other legislation and campaigns. In 2019, she introduced a 6-bill legislative package named A Just Society, focusing on everything from anti-poverty initiatives to improving working conditions with her Place to Prosper Act, including national rent control and beefed up tenant protections. It doesn't matter. None of this matters. Because the way that they vote, that wipes all this out. I can tell you that I support universal health care, But if behind closed doors, I take money from Blue Cross Blue Shield, my words don't mean a damn thing. Let's continue. The Center for Popular Democracy worked closely with the Congresswoman on housing portion of the package. That included joining CPD affiliates for several mobilizations over housing, including in August 2019 Welcome Back to Congress action that saw hundreds of protesters turn up at the House members' offices. None of this matters. None of this matters. Mejia says AOC and other squad members, again, see? The separation again. AOC and other squad members contributed to the organization's Medicare for All campaign, including by helping CPD staff prepare activists Addie Barkin to testify at a hearing on the policy. Okay. Where was the squad when we had March for Medicare for All in over 50 cities across this country? The only person that showed up was Cori Bush. She came to the DC march and then complained about the fact that people were doing the damn march. Where were they? Contributed to the organization. How? How she contribute? When the activists on the ground called for you and you nowhere, you go to campaign in Ohio with Nina Turner. Let me tell you how they messed up. You go to campaign in Ohio with Nina Turner and totally avoid the Medicare for All marches. And there was Medicare marches in Ohio. Then when Nina Turner runs for re-election, you pretend like she don't exist. Last year, squad members also took part in civil disobedience action over the overturning of Roe v. Wade that saw her and 16 other members of Congress arrested, and where AOC was criticized for faking being handcuffed by holding her hands behind her back, even though that was exactly what the organization had trained them to do to show they weren't resisting arrest. Okay. Number one, they had approval to do it. They got approval to do the protest, to go there and protest. Two, that's her protesting and fighting back against the right wing. The assignment from Justice Democrats and from DSA was to go into Congress and push back against the Democrat establishment. That is where they have failed. None of us disagree. I don't think none of us have a problem, or none of us really said that they don't push back against the right. That's easy for them to do because they're Democrats and that's what their party does anyway. The task that was given to them was to push back against the establishment Democrats in their own party. That assignment, they failed. So the examples that Branko is giving you in this article were not a part of the assignment. It goes on to say, AOC has likewise worked closely with Housing Justice for All, taking part in town halls, workshops on eviction defense, and other events. One of the campaigns that she was prominent in was for a package of state-level housing bills in 2019, one of which sponsored by Socialist State Senator Julia Salazar, that presented sweeping reforms to New York's housing regulatory landscape, including an expansion of New York City's rent control. The legislation was passed and signed into law later that year. Again, that's easy. Those are the easy things. Especially housing is one of the easiest ones that you can raise your hand for and say, I'm going to try to push some type of legislation for this. That's the easy part. Like, he's really like, this is crumbs. Let's go on. That's more about town halls, yada, yada. I wanted to go on to another part. And I want to point something else out to you. AOC has lent her considerable platform to other union fights. Have you guys noticed something about this article? Okay. The article is supposed to be about the squad. But as you read this article, you start to notice not only is this article trying to defend the squad, but they're mainly trying to defend AOC. Most of the things mentioned in this article are about AOC. Why? Why are they trying to defend her so much? Where's this article to defend Cori Bush when she was silenced by the Democratic Party and they told her she couldn't talk about defund the police anymore? This article is not defending Cori Bush, Ayanna Pressley, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman. You know why? You know why this article is mainly defending AOC? Because like I told you, they are grooming her to be the next Nancy Pelosi. Out of all of the members, they believe she's the one to be next to do it. And so if AOC has a bad reputation, particularly with unions, a reputation of breaking strikes, being a scab, a reputation of voting to fund war, that is going to hurt her chances of doing so. Here we go. She's lent her considerable platform to other union fights. She skipped the inauguration to attend a Teamster strike and urged others to show up, again, rallied with UPS workers as they prepared to strike this year, publicly backed and spotlit Starbucks workers' unionized struggles, and joined the picket line at the Buffalo Hospital, worked a bar in solidarity with tipped workers, and recently showed up at an actors and writers picket line in Manhattan. None of that matters when you vote to prevent the railroad workers from going on strike. None of this matters. I don't care what picket line you get into, you were done after that. Okay? So don't come back to me with, oh, well, she did these things for the unions and da-da-da. She voted against them. She became a scab, God damn it. And then this article pisses me off. None of this shit matters now. None of it. If I go stand in line with the Starbucks workers that are on strike and I say, yeah, and I give a speech, but then behind their damn back, I go vote against the railroad workers for going on strike, would you trust me? Give me a break. Critics would dismiss these as meaningless symbolic actions, but this is belied by the fierce and well-justified criticism she received when she failed to attend an Amazon workers rally in 2021 prior to a union vote. Jesus. Oh my God. The failure to attend the Amazon workers rally, that is mild in comparison to voting to prevent workers from going on strike. He goes on to say that they patched things up, yada, yada. Remember that? Similar to the Iron Dome vote, criticism of AOC has focused almost exclusively on her justifiably maligned missed ALU appearance, but then wholesale ignores the way she's assisted unionization efforts and other worker struggle. Your assistance to union efforts and worker struggles all went out the damn door when you voted against the workers. This defense article of AOC, this is a desperate plea for whatever is left of the Bernie movement to still keep supporting AOC. Similar to her Iron Dome vote, Criticism of AOC has focused almost exclusively on her justifiably maligned Miss ALU appearance, yada, yada. Goes on to say the result is a distorted picture of not just her record, but the value she and other left-wing elected officials have for these movements, which, similar to the striking teachers inspired by the 2016 Sanders campaign, has included spurring on others' own political work. This is an absolute mess. Distorted picture. She votes along with Joe Biden almost 90% of the time. Her campaign for office in 2018 was very inspirational to a lot of the people who ended up running on the no IDC slate. Got to go all the way back to 2018. See how he trying to do? Let me go back to 2018 so I can remind everybody what she was doing back then. Boy, I tell you. And then this part here, seeds of radicalism. Finally, there's the somewhat more nebulous role AOC and the squad have played in political shifts over the past few years. The process of political transformation is messy and chaotic. Desperate actions added up little by little and then suddenly building up pressure on those in power, expanding the bounds of what's possible and creating momentum for change. It's undeniable that the squad, by virtue of their work in Congress and acting as a conduit for outside groups, has been integral to this. Conduit for outside groups. The outside groups that they ignore? AOC's Green New Deal resolution might be one of the most impactful pieces of legislation that never became law. Okay. In order to be effective in Congress, you have to pass bills. When you look at effectiveness, AOC is not effective. When it comes to legislation, she's still not effective. You can look up the numbers yourself. So if you can't pass no damn bills, then you're not effective. And if you're not effective, then you don't need to be there. I love how they continue to give the credit of the Green New Deal to her when the Green New Deal came from the Green Party. And when AOC and Ed Markey got a hold of it, they watered it down. Yada, yada, yada. And then this piece right here. Let me go down. Just want to make sure I go. This part right here. More than that, a number of popular pandemic era policies had antecedents in or received crucial support from the squad. A third round of stimulus checks wouldn't have happened under Joe Biden without the leadership forcing the issue. Squad members were consistently pushing for student debt cancellation as far back as 2019 and were among the most prominent voices urging Biden to enact it as soon as he won in 2020, which he, of course, eventually did. Oh my God. This kiss-ass article, not going to point out where Biden messed up in reference to student loan debt cancellation, not going to point out the fact that it was actually activist groups like the Debt Collective and other, there's another guy came on here to talk about it as well. They were the ones that actually have been fighting for this for years before the squad was even known, before they even ran for office. A lot of that pressure also came from the outside. In fact, the very start of the pandemic, she called for direct cash payments, a pause on student loan repayments, mortgage relief, and moratorium on evictions, all of which soon became core. Yeah, but let's stop pretending like this was all her and she did this all by herself. It was not. There was already a consensus for that. There was already a party consensus for that. Jesus Christ. Give me a second. It was only 9 days later that the much larger CARES Act with its stimulus checks and UBI, like unemployment insurance payments, became law. The CARES Act sent money to that money went to corporations though. Like oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. That's right, Colin. She voted for the CARES Act. Thank you, Colin. This article is terrible. Now, let's get to the bottom. And they talk about despair. It's a long ass article. But this part right here. What's at stake isn't the feelings of one member of Congress or even the squad's career, but the health of the socialist and broader progressive movements. I'm going to say this again. They're not socialist. Socialists support workers owning the means of production. They're democratic socialists. They're more like what you have in Denmark. It's not the same thing. The left pessimism embodied by the New York Magazine's profile, which argues explicitly that socialists have nothing to show for 5 years of electoral victories and that the whole experiment should be abandoned, is a recipe for despair, apathy, and in the end, demobilization, which may already have a trickle-down effect. I told you this was a response to that article from that Freddie DeBoer wrote, and that article was spot on. And this piece here, when he says they have nothing to show for 5 years of electoral victories, Freddie was correct about that. Because the thing is, again, they ain't passed no damn policies on the national level. All the progressive policies that have passed in this country have passed on the local level. And that was not with the help of the squad. Most of them done through ballot initiatives. I know, because we've done it here in Massachusetts, and I ain't seen near one of them around for that. So Freddie was correct. This piece right here, it's a recipe for despair, apathy, and in the end, demobilization. Only if you see that as the only strategy. Why are you only looking at this one strategy in reference to achieving and accomplishing something? I just told you the progressive policies that we passed in the states had nothing to do with the squad. That was direct democracy. So you see, this is what they do. Well, if you criticize them and stuff, it's just going to lead people to feel, apathetic, and people will be demobilized. And these are the same people that will say, we're basically telling people to do nothing. No, we're not telling you to do nothing. You just don't want to do nothing else. They just want to go to the voting booth and vote because that's easy. They don't want to get out in the streets. They don't want to try to do any type of mutual aid or community organizing because that requires work. So it makes them feel good about themselves, and they feel like they're really doing something just by voting for these people. That's what this is about. Let me continue. It is a self-defeating, possibly self-fulfilling prophecy that threatens to undermine socialist gains. They're not socialists. Ironically, at the exact same time the movement is racking up victories it hasn't seen in many decades. There's no victories for the people. There's no victories for the people. Think about all the things they were supposed to do. They couldn't force the vote for Medicare for all. We don't have universal health care in this country. The student debt cancellation was a freaking disaster. Where's all this stuff they were supposed to do? They're voting for war. This article, let me go back to the beginning. AOC and the squad's list of left-wing accomplishments is quite long. Makes it seem like he's going to talk about the squad and AOC. But this article is basically a defense piece for AOC. Most of the things that are mentioned in this article is about her, not necessarily the squad. Jacobin, Jacobin is the DSA media apparatus. And you have to have the media to back and support you to come in and defend you. They all alike. DSA, Jacobin, they mainly just a bunch of PMCs, professional managerial class, that just want to sit back, go get their nails done, go to brunch and have their mimosas and say, I voted for AOC, and that make them feel good about themselves and they feel like they did something good today. That's what that's about. A lot of these people, the Jacobin people, the DSA people, they have the resources and the means to do a lot more than what I do. We talk about community organizing and helping people in the community. They make a lot more money than I make. They have the capital, they have the wealth to get out there and actually make change within their community. But they don't want to do that because that requires work. They'd rather just sit back and say that they voted for someone who's supposed to be progressive. And anybody who comes to criticize them, and rightfully so, they're going to come and defend them, because in a way, if you're criticizing the squad and they idolize the squad, in a way, you criticizing them too. And that's what this is really about. When you criticize people like AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, in a way, any of those Justice Democrats, you're also criticizing Justice Democrats. You're also criticizing DSA. You're also criticizing Cenk and Kyle, because this was their project. But I do believe that they are grooming AOC to be the next Nancy Pelosi. And I also believe, I would not be surprised if they're banking on AOC to run for president. And that would be really good for the media apparatus. You see, they work together. That would be great financially for Jacobin. That would be great for all these shows. Could you imagine if AOC ran for president? You know how much money that would bring people like Kyle and Cenk and Anna and Jacobin? They all in on this together. That's how I see it. I'm going to go to some of the comments here. Thank you for the, I said this already. Whoops. Sorry, I don't want to read same ones. Shout out to Billy X for becoming a new member. Give Billy a big whoop, whoop. Shout out to Solomon Mendez for becoming a Sabby member. Give Solomon a big whoop, whoop. And thank you for the super chat, Michael. On reparations, she said Latinos are black too. SMH. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't know what to tell you, man. I'm looking at all this stuff. I've been paying attention. Pay attention to what's happening. Nina Turner been making a lot of press appearances lately. She said on Twitter that she has an announcement coming soon. I'm just telling you, watch. The media apparatus for this progressive strategy, they are banking on, oh, yes, please run, because that helps them. That helps them grow. That's why they were banking on Marianne Williamson. Marianne Williamson turned out to be a freaking disaster. Can't bank on that now. She not bringing that money come that way, right? Some of these people are millionaires, you guys. Millionaires. And what are they doing with their resources? Do you know if I was a millionaire, you know what I could do? You know how many people I could feed? You know how many people I could give clothes to? You know how many people I could help if I was a millionaire? A lot of greed and a lot of money to be made. And so since Marianne is not that one to really bring in that Bernie money for those channels that started when Bernie had his two campaigns, Marianne not bringing over that Bernie money. Then they're going to try to tell you that Joe Biden is actually doing well. The shift is so freaking noticeable. Alrighty. Thank you, Eric. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin Roger. Exactly. They talking about 2019. She went down after April 2020 CARES Act. She never uses her vote as leverage like Freedom Caucus to get concessions. Yep, Sabby, and New York State is a strong government union state. AO Scab. I think this says AO. Yeah, AO Scab. That's what that says. Yeah, this is a mess. That's why when people come for me, sometimes I get emails from people. They email me saying, I don't think it's right that you're criticizing the squad. And I don't think it's right that you're criticizing these people. They're the only thing we got left in no Bernie movement. First of all, there's no more damn Bernie movement. Bernie left the movement himself and said Joe Biden was his good friend. If they care so much about these progressive policies and issues being passed, why aren't any of those squad members and Bernie Sanders supporting either Cornel West or Marianne Williamson, who's running on those progressive policies? This is all a money grab. And the media people that's in on it too, it's a money grab for them too. Because the reality is, if I sat here and I said the same things that Kyle Kulinski said, oh, this channel would have been blown up. And I would make a lot more money. But I ain't no damn sellout. Fuck that. Vote for Biden if you want to. Forget it. Thank you for the super chat, Bryce. Most of these people that are defending the wealthy are as empty and hollow like them, talking about the blind leading the blind. Look, guys, I saw all this stuff. I saw it happen. I remember when David Pakman was progressive. Remember that? When David Pakman was like, yay, go Bernie, yay. David realized there was more money to be made if he tells you to support Joe Biden. David went all the way over to Democrat establishment support. I remember. Everyone talks about Dave Rubin, you know, switching from TYT and becoming conservative or whatever it is that Dave Rubin is today. But a lot of people don't talk about how some of these progressive podcasters also pivot after Biden won to enrich themselves. I'm giving you the tea tonight. Speaking of tea, we're going to go ahead and get into this town hall with Vivek Ramaswamy. Now, this is really interesting because I told you guys, I give credit to News Nation for being open to bringing on different people. And they seem to be middle of the road kind of thing. So I give credit for them doing that. Like they're bringing on people from both sides. They're having town halls for people, you know, regardless if they're running as a Democrat or if they're running as a Republican. I think that's pretty straight, you know. This is actually a really good town hall. And I told you guys before that Vivek is climbing in the polls. I showed you a poll last night where he's actually ahead of Ron DeSantis in one of those polls. There's so many different ones. But in all the polls that I saw, he's still in the top 3, regardless if he's second place or third place. But there were some things mentioned in this town hall last night that I really want to point out. Who is Vivek Ramaswamy? Where did he come from? A couple of you sent me emails asking, how is it that this guy kind of came out of nowhere, yet he became so popular and he's already in the top 3 of the GOP primary? These are all good questions to ask. But when we go into this town hall, we're going to start off with foreign policy. And I'm glad they started off this way. I was like, I didn't have to dig for the foreign policy questions. Because there's something that he says here in reference to war in the military that I'm a little bit confused about, according to what's on his website. Listen to this. This woman here standing up in the audience, her son actually was in Afghanistan. So if you can imagine, she has strong, views about like the military, what happened to her son. So let's get started here. If you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. That helps me with the algo. Thank you very much.
And thank you for your kind words. So, Mr. Ramaswamy, given your lack of national security experience, how would you address the increasing aggressive actions towards our naval ships and pilots in the Pacific by the Chinese and the Russians?
Well, thank you for that question, Denise. And the first thing I also want to say is I thank your son for his service, and I'm sorry for your loss. My hallmark as U.S. president is to make sure, I'm saying this as the parent of two sons myself, that we will not send our sons and daughters to die in wars that do not advance American interests.
All right, let's pause right here. So he's not anti-war, but he is against having U.S. soldiers participate in wars that actually have nothing to do with American interests, as he put it. So I just want to clarify there, because I want people to hear that, oh, he's anti-war. No, not necessarily. So let me let him finish. Listen to what he says, and then I'm going to show you something.
That is going to be a solid principle for me in leading this country. If we're going to use our military, it is going to be to defend the interests of Americans here on American soil.
Okay, so that's important for people to hear. So he basically feels like the military should be used to defend this country here on American soil, not to send these soldiers to all these different wars and all that kind of thing. So he doesn't seem to approve of Russia, the conflict with Russia and Ukraine. I know there's another interview that he did recently about that particular issue. But I got some questions, because if that's the case, and if he feels that he would not have our military support those types of conflicts that are not in American interests, and he only wants the military to defend America here on American soil, then that would mean that you could actually free up the defense budget, some of that money in the defense budget, because the military will be scaled back, right? You can use that money towards other things. But I'm a little bit confused. And the reason why I say that, I'm going to come back to the town hall, because if that's the case, that the military will be scaled back, then why is Vivek trying to encourage military recruitment? On his website, under civic duty voting, he says the United States faces a 25% recruitment deficit in the military, and just 16% of Gen Z say they're proud to be American. The absence of national pride is a serious threat to our republic's survival at a time when young Americans are taught to celebrate differences. Civic duty voting, and in particular the service path, creates a sense of shared purpose and experience. This piece right here, in substance, this amendment will increase the standard voting age to 25 while still allowing all Americans to vote at age 18 if they meet a national service requirement, at least 6 months in the military or first responder role, or else pass the same civics tests required of nationalized citizens. Voting will remain open to citizens starting from the age of 18 who are U.S. and have demonstrated civic information in at least one of several ways: direct service to the country in the military or first response service. This is a way to increase the military recruitment, to solve that recruitment issue, right? But again, if I'm thinking about what he said in the town hall, if he only wants to utilize the military to defend the country and on our own soil, and he's not going to have the military participate in these proxy wars, then in that sense, the military would be scaled back. And if you're scaling the military back, why do you need to increase recruitment? I don't know. You guys tell me. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but that just seems to be a little bit weird. Something to think about. Let's go back into the town hall.
As it relates to the South Pacific, the question you asked about, we do have a vital interest at stake in making sure that China does not control the global semiconductor supply chain in Taiwan. We depend on that supply chain for our entire modern way of life, from those shoes in our feet to even the phones in our pockets, to these lights in this room being powered by leading edge advanced semiconductors. So one of the things that I have said is that until we have achieved semiconductor independence, we will ensure that Taiwan is not invaded by China. We will do whatever is necessary to deter China from invading Taiwan. I will end the Ukraine war on terms that pull Russia out of its alliance with China. We will upgrade our alliance with India to make sure they're on side as well.
Pause. So there was another interview that he had recently in reference to Russia and Ukraine, and it was with Simone Sanders. And he said that he would basically tell Vladimir Putin, you have to end your military relationship or your relationship that you have with China. I'm sorry, but I don't think that Vladimir Putin's just gonna be like, okay. Like, I don't know about that. I don't think that would work. And who are we to tell another country who they can be in business with? I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm just laughing because I could see the expression on Vladimir Putin's face, kind of just like, the fuck is wrong with you? Like, I don't see that happening at all.
Turn Taiwan into a porcupine, and yes, move more of our naval assets, run a destroyer through the Taiwan Strait every month if that's what's necessary. But after that, our commitments will change. And if we move from strategic ambiguity to strategic clarity, then China knows it will not be in their self-interest to aggress on Taiwan until we have achieved true independence. And after that, I'm not going to send our sons and daughters to die to fight somebody else's civil war. But until then, that is a vital national security interest. And I do think it takes an outsider to be able to see it that way.
I'm just so confused. Michael said that won't happen either. I just don't understand this.
All right, a couple of quick things. You said to fight someone else's civil war. That would be a major change in American policy to declare that a civil war would be the way to figure out the Taiwan issue, number one. Number two, you said to deter Chinese aggression. Does that mean that you would categorically say American forces would defend Taiwan?
My message to Xi Jinping is you do not mess with the United States of America, and you do not mess with our interests. And our interests include Taiwan until we have achieved semiconductor independence.
But Taiwan is a part of China. It's like, I don't understand. I'm so confused. That's the part a lot of people don't want to bring up. It's like Taiwan is a part of China. And it's just, again, like, who are we to tell China that they can't even, how do you invade something that's already a part of you? Let's continue.
So yes, I will be very clear that we are fully prepared to actually see that through, that we will move for 2 Ohio-class SSGNs to the South China Sea, as well as to the Pacific. We will move destroyers through the Taiwan Strait. We will enter our alliance with India. We will pull Russia out of its military alliance with China by ending the Ukraine war. This is how we deter them. But after 2028, after the end of my first term, we will be in a position to say our commitments will be different. Xi Jinping will not go for Taiwan until the end of my first term. I'm confident of that. And that is how we secure American interests while avoiding nuclear war. I do think that this will be the most important element of our foreign policy for whoever's the next president. And I think the strategic clarity that I'm offering is actually more likely to secure peace than the position of strategic ambiguity that the U.S. has so far adopted.
All right, we'll move on to Victor Rottinghouse in Iowa. He's a truck driver and a veteran of the U.S. military, joining us from Des Moines. Go ahead.
Hey, Mr. Ramaswamy. With all the division, we would like to know who are your top cabinet picks that you would choose to seek advice and counsel from?
All right, I think I'll clarify just a little bit in that it's early, right?
Yes.
In this process. So it may not be early yet and fair yet to make you pick an actual cabinet as of now with names. But if we zoom out a little bit, give us some names of either Donald Trump's cabinet, Joe Biden's cabinet, Barack Obama's cabinet, even George W. Bush's cabinet, that are of the type of people you would look for.
So look, when it comes to foreign policy, I believe in Cold War realists as the kind of school of thought that I want to see. Not people who favor the moderate liberal hegemony, not neoconservatives, but the likes of George Kennan, who of course has long passed, or James Baker. That gives you the sense of the kind of foreign policy vision that I want to bring to the table. Realism, nations advancing their own self-interest. I think that's what we're missing in our foreign policy establishment today. When it comes to somebody who wants to lead the U.S. Federal Reserve, for example, a really important pick that the next president will have to make in January of 2026, I like the likes of Rand Paul or Ron Paul, who have a vision that I share for radical reform of the U.S. Federal Reserve, restoring dollar stability as a single mandate. But in any case, whoever it is in a cabinet position, it is going to have to be somebody who shares my commitment to an originalist understanding of the Constitution. And Leland, one of the things we've already done that no other campaign has done is we've released our list of federal judges and Supreme Court picks. That's something that's actually provided greater transparency for how I see the Constitution. And I think it's also going to have to be cabinet members and other federal employees who are committed to my vision to reduce the federal employee headcount by 75% by the end of my first term, 50% by the end of the first year. So these are going to have to be agency heads who are, yes, willing, ready, able, and even have the energy to actually fire potentially a majority of the people reporting into them.
So that piece right there, this is one of the pieces of his platform where it raised a lot of red flags with people when he said he wanted to cut 75% of the federal workforce. And one of the things that I pointed out is that, but again, if you're looking at where most of the federal workforce is in this country, we're talking about Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. Those are areas that he wouldn't win as a Republican anyway. So that actually does not hurt him. And he actually went up in the polls after he made that statement. I don't know.
That is how we restore integrity in our constitutional republic.
All right, so I got James Baker and I got Ronald Rand Paul. Any other former cabinet members, any other current cabinet members that you'd be willing to say this is the kind of person I'm looking for?
Well, look, we're sitting here in August before the first debate, still 5 months in advance of the first primary. Many of them could even be other people who are running in this race for U.S. president. I'm looking forward to that debate stage. I'll be keeping an eye and remembering who's actually doing next best to see if actually they might actually occupy a pretty good cabinet role. I think there are good governors in this, a lot of good Republican governors, from Brian Kemp to Kim Reynolds to Kevin Stitt to Kristi Noem. I mean, the list goes on. So I think we have a deep bench to choose from. But that bench of red state governors will be one of the places that I look for my cabinet as well.
All right, so that's where the team of rivals comes from.
Yes.
If it would be. Anybody who's on the debate stage that you're going to be with that you think could make up part of that team of rivals?
Look, I actually think pretty highly of most of I don't want to call them competitors. I'll call them colleagues who are on that debate stage. You don't hear me bashing other candidates because I'm going to need each of them to play their role when it comes to reviving this nation. And so, yes, I do think that this presidential campaign will put some of them to the test. I think a certain number of them will be eligible for cabinet positions in my administration. I also want to say a word about Trump. I think Trump was an excellent president. I think his defeat of Hillary Clinton in 2016 was an important political event that stopped the leftward march through our government and our institutions. And so I expect to take him as an advisor as well.
So this is, let me, hold on. I got to show you guys something because one of you sent this to me. And I think it's only fair that I show this because we need to figure out who Vivek is. And I say this because notice that he said that he thought that Trump was an excellent president. Well, my thing is, if you think that Trump was an excellent president, then why are you running for president? If, especially since Trump is in the lead in the GOP primary, right? Who is Vivek? And we'll go back to the town hall in just a second. You guys sent me this. I did not know about this. I told you Vivek reminds me a lot of Barack Obama. His mannerisms, the Harvard connection, right? And I often wondered, was Vivek selected? Look at this. GOP candidate Vivek Ramaswamy sues World Economic Forum in landmark case. Did you know about this? There's just one thing I want to show you from this article. This is important. Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy is suing the WEF, claiming the Swiss-based organization falsely portrayed him as one of its young global leaders and refused to take his name off its website for 2 years. So apparently he didn't approve this or didn't approve of this. But if the WEF has its eyes on Vivek, what does that say about Vivek? How do I know Vivek was not selected just like Obama? I mean, you don't see them picking out just anybody, right? They chose him. Ramaswamy, 37, the son of immigrants from India who says he is worth $500 million, does not want to be associated with the WEF's progressive and radical policies and positions, according to the lawsuit, which was filed Wednesday in Cincinnati, Ohio. This article was released April 19th, 2023. So he filed the lawsuit. From what I understand, I think he won this lawsuit. So he was against it. He was not in favor of the WEF. But my concern is the fact that they chose him. You see that? They chose him. So they're looking at him. There's something else I want to show you too. Someone else sent me this. Hold on. I didn't know about this either. So I'm learning tonight. I've been learning today. I'm like, what? So let me cough really quick. Sorry. I don't want to sign in, man. I'm sorry, you guys. They make me sign into these things sometimes, and sometimes I don't have to. And I'm like, I don't know why I need to sign in again. Like, what? Okay. Just send me back to the article. Okay, here we go. All right, here we go. Let me make this bigger. Look at this. Let me put this up here. Now, this was written February 22nd this year, right? I think this is the one with Vivek came out of nowhere and now he's running for president. It's the piece here. Not that one. Hold on. This part right here. I told you about the WEF. Did you know about Soros? So this part was kind of weird. GOP presidential candidate is a literal check notes Soros fellow. George Soros. Here it is here. Look, Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowship for New Americans. He's a Soros. You see this? Meet the fellows. How do you feel about that? I don't know, man. I don't know, but we need to start asking this question. Who is he? Who is he? All right, let's go back to the town hall.
I'm actually taking to the next level our America First agenda, shutting down that administrative state. There were some forces that stopped him that I expect will not stop me, but I will be proud to still learn from the foundation that he laid and even understand what he would have done differently. So that's the way I think about my fellow competitors in this race. They're people who I will rely on in different ways from the White House as I lead this nation forward. This is not a one-man job. This is a team sport. That's the way I see it.
All right, we'll get back a little later to how you'd shut down the administrative state. Meantime, Deval Patel, who's a financial consultant here in
1 second. Yeah, Blunts and Otters, Sabby got the receipts. It came from you guys, though. Like, you guys, ever since I did that one segment about Vivek when he was interviewed by Russell Brand, I got a number of emails like from you guys about this guy. And I was just like, no, I did not know all these things. So shout out to you guys.
Chicago with us now.
Great. Thank you for being here. Welcome back to Chicago. So regardless of who you voted for, it's not a secret that 2016, 2020, highly divisive for the country. Behind closed doors, when I speak to my more left-leaning friends, it's clear that we all want the same things. We might disagree on policy of how to get to the outcome, but it's very clear that everyone's pretty much on the same page. So what is your value proposition, regardless of party standing, on how you're going to unite the country and especially convince, let's say, folks in Chicago who have largely voted a certain way for most of their lives on why you are the right candidate to unite the country regardless of policy?
Deval, thank you. That's such an important question. We're skating on thin ice as a country now. I do not want to see us march to some national divorce. I want to lead us to a national revival. The first and most important catalyst to do that is a landslide election in 2024. This cannot be another 50.1 election. It just can't. I think that is risky for the country. It may take some of that ice and actually run some cracks through it that I do not want to see happen. I think I am the only candidate in the Republican field who can actually deliver that landslide because we are bringing young people with us in droves.
Guys, anybody that's listening, if you are independent or you're conservative, you're listening, do you think that Trump supporters would vote for Vivek? Realistically, do you guys think that they would vote for him? Because the thing is like, I don't think that they would. Just curious.
I'm the youngest person ever to run for U.S. president in the Republican Party. I have lived the American dream. This country has given me much. Son of immigrants who came to this country with no money. I've gone on to found multi-billion-dollar companies. Did it while marrying my wife, raising our 2 sons. That's the example we want to set for this country of what is possible, regardless of whether you're black or white, regardless of whether you are Democrat or Republican. That's the way it's done in the United States of America. That is what unites us. And I think the way we get to national unity, actually, from the White House isn't just through policy, because we're going to disagree on a wide range of contentious policies. But I think half the role of U.S. president is setting a tone of national character, of being a president in the White House. And I think it's been a long time since we've had one who meets this high standard, where I can look my 2 sons in the eye and tell them in good conscience that whether or not I agree with his policies, at least I want you to grow up and be like him. I think that's an important part of how the next president can actually reunite this country. That's the standard I want you to hold me to when I'm in that position, if you all put me there.
So I just want to tell you guys, when you watch these town halls, just, be advised that the people who stand up in the audience and ask these questions, those people have already been pre-selected. I know I've been in these town halls before personally. So the questions have already been chosen. So they make it seem like it's just, they're randomly just calling on that person. The questions have already been selected prior to the town hall. So just FYI, they pick certain people for a reason. One of you just told me that he can't run. He can't be president. I was trying to find that comment. If you find that comment, Eric, Can you? Oh, here it is. Gar says he's not born here. From what I read, it said his parents were born in India and that he was born here. No? That's what I read. All right, a little bit more here. Here we go.
Thank you.
Is that going to work for your friends, you think?
We're still a year away, but I think we're on our way there.
One more thing I want to add, and we could share this with your friends too, for what it's worth, is some people think, good people, even in the Republican Party, believe the way we get to national unity is through compromise. I actually see it differently. I think the way we get to national unity is by being uncompromising about the principles that actually make us American. The pursuit of excellence, meritocracy, free speech, the rule of law, self-governance over aristocracy. If we're being honest, those are extreme ideals. Those are radical ideals. But that's what makes America itself. And our strength in our country is not our diversity. In some ways, we have gotten so obsessed with celebrating our diversity and our differences so much that we forgot all of the ways we are really just the same as Americans, bound by a common creed. E pluribus unum means from many one. That's actually what we're going to have to revive. That which unites us across our diversity, that's our true strength.
It's just like Obama-esque. Like, you came from Harvard, we can tell, and you worth $500 million. You have successful businesses, and that's great that you did well. You did well in business and all that jazz. But I mean, it's like, I told you I've seen this before. I saw it with Barack Obama. You can watch the rest of that town hall. It's long. You can watch the rest of it on News Nation if you want to see the full thing. But very interesting. Thank you so much for that, Eric. Thanks so much for that. I'm going to go to some of these comments. Thank you for the super chat, a kid. Sabby, congratulations on the 50K subs. Much love and respect for all you do, 100%. Thank you, a kid. Equinos says, this guy owns a company that competes with BlackRock and Vanguard. It's like, thank you, none of your business. War is what he said about China and Taiwan. Thank you for that. And thank you, Carlos. The citizens of the Republic of Taiwan would disagree. Taiwan is part of China. It's just, we've had this conversation on the show multiple times. Danny Haifong came on the show and explained the entire thing. Like, thank you for the super chat. Again, none of your business. He is the same old war hawk. Thank you, Frank. He's not a good Obama clone. Miss Sabs, he wrote a book called Woke Inc. He is anti-WEF. They're trying to smear him. Thank you for that, Miss. Yeah, that was the impression that I got, that like he really did not want that. But they put his name up there. I don't know what's going on. Thank you, Frank. He's Pete 2.0. No, another Pete. Okay. Let me take that comment on Rockfin and then we'll get to the Cenk and Bernie story. Thank you so much for the tip on Rockfin, Dave. Thank you to Sabrina and Eric for keeping it live. People should get ready for new forms and self-sufficiency and discipline to try new things and take risk in some ways. Thank you, Roger. Sab Pacman saw them Boston housing prices increases and said, oop, time for a shift. Follow-up question to Vivek should have been, which American interests? American big business interests? Close down the military bases. Always remember, people, never approach politicians asking their solutions. No, you approach with your solutions and demand they get down with your solutions. Post office are federal workers too. Oh, that's a good point. I forgot about the Postal Service. That's a good point, Roger. Maybe he's not referring to them. The mail's got to run. Okay, we're going into the story here with TYT. Now, TYT has basically been the flagship network of progressive media. A lot of progressive shows came from TYT. And even in times when a lot of us have been very critical of the squad, TYT stood by them and defended them. But I think it has even reached a breaking point even for someone like Cenk. Now, Anna was the first to speak out a couple of months ago, but now even Cenk Uygur just doesn't seem to have that hope for them like he did before. And he went as far as to actually criticize Bernie Sanders in this episode that was sent to me. And I think you guys need to see this. Now, this is called Congressional Progressives Make a Move. Is it for real? This is in reference to the wealth tax. Listen to this.
Progressive lawmakers in both the House and the Senate have proposed two pieces of legislation, with one focusing on a potential wealth tax and the other calling for a minimum wage hike, which, by the way, has not been done on a federal level for 14 years. Nonetheless, are these serious proposals, or is this just more theater from lawmakers, in this particular case, progressive lawmakers? That's what we're here to discuss and potentially debate. Now, let's start with the wealth tax. I want to give you guys the details. It's super easy to understand, okay? They call it the oligarch tax, or I'm sorry, Oligarch Act. And it was introduced just yesterday by Representatives Barbara Lee, Summer Lee, Rashida Tlaib, and Jamal Bowman. Now, instead of taxing a specific wealth threshold, they have decided to propose something that is way more easy to understand, not complicated at all, okay? They would tax the rich based on how much more wealth they have than the median American household. Apparently, the median American household currently is $120,000 in wealth. Okay, so here's how the four tax brackets would work should this legislation pass, which it most certainly will not, but nonetheless, let's take a look. So 2% for all wealth between 1,000 and 10,000 times median household wealth.
I'm gonna pause here because I want to point out something here. This seems like a softer version of what we just did in Massachusetts, and I'll explain what I mean. This chart here, where it says 4% for all wealth between 10,000 and 100,000 times median household wealth. What we did here in Massachusetts is it's also 4%, but it's called the billionaire's tax. And it's not just based on your income, it's also based on your assets, like, right, what you own. So even if you don't earn $1 million annually, if you have at least a minimum of 1 million in assets, in wealth, then you fell under that 4% of that millionaire's tax. Now, because we passed that here in Massachusetts, that means that was the money, some of the money that went towards providing free lunch for kids here in all the schools. So I talked about the free lunch thing that just passed here, but it came from that millionaire's tax. But from what I see here, for all wealth between 10,000 and 100,000 times median household wealth, now you're basically relying on the median household wealth, but define median household, because it's something to me that is just like when we say the median household income, right? Who does that really include? I could say the median household income of such and such state is $150,000. The problem with that, though, is all the people, like working class people and poor people, they don't fall into that 150,000 for the median household. They're not making that. They don't have $150,000 for their household. But the problem is when you lump all of the amounts together and you come up with the median, that's what the median is. So for me, I guess to make this more simpler, why didn't they just do the way we did it here in Massachusetts? I don't know. Let me just go ahead. You know what I mean? It's a lot easier just to say if you make a minimum of $1 million, or if you have assets, wealth that are at least $1 million, then you fall under the 4% wealth tax. I don't know. Let's go on.
4% for all wealth between 10,000 and 100,000 times median household wealth, and 6% for all wealth between 100,000 and 1 million times median household wealth. and 8% for all wealth over 1 million times median household wealth. Okay, I mean, very few people are at the top bracket there, but nonetheless, what do you think of this proposal, Cenk, before I move on to the
Okay, so to
wage
give
hike?
you a sense, guys, of who this affects, it affects people with wealth over $120 million. That's the beginning part of their proposal as things stand today.
It's probably best to word it that way. Instead of like median household, this 2%, 4%, 8%, like it's probably best just to word it the way that he just said it.
That's why if this becomes a real issue and they're battling over this, which is unlikely, and that's part of the debate we're about to have, but you will hear Republicans say, oh, they're just trying to tax the average man. No, they're not. They're trying to tax people with more than $120 million, just so you understand. And I like the proposal because they're saying, hey, look, if we don't have income inequality, then this tax won't even exist, because then you won't have 1,000 times the wealth of the average household in America, let alone 1 million times the median household wealth.
Right.
So it makes a lot of sense as a way to structure a wealth tax, if you're gonna have a wealth tax at all.
So the tax is not pegged to a specific dollar threshold by design. This causes the tax to wax and wane with wealth concentration, intensifying during periods of rising inequality, but tapering off to near non-existence when median household wealth increases and inequality moderates to an acceptable level. So additionally, the Oligarch Act would require at least a 30% IRS audit rate on households affected by the wealth tax. So, I mean, I just think the IRS should audit people who are clearly filing tax returns that have some shady, like, red flags involved.
No, so they theoretically do, but they've been defunded by the Republicans so much that they don't. So in an ideal world, after a certain number, almost all of those folks would be audited because their taxes are so much. And this does have, theoretically, again, the way that the system was originally structured, you get more audited as your wealth goes up because there's so much more money to gain from when you catch people who are cheating, okay? So, but in reality, the people who get the earned income tax credit, who make the least amount of money in this country, are audited 5.5 times the average person. So,
True story. I was audited in grad school. Make that make sense. Why would you audit me as a student? I had a part-time job. I was working part-time. So why? It's just the most rare. But look, they will come after people like me, right? But the point of all this that I'm going to make, and they're going to get into as well, was that this is obviously not going to pass, right? Republicans have the majority in the House, and I don't even think the majority of Democrats in the House approve of this either. So this is obviously not going to pass. To that point, it was obvious that Medicare for All also was not going to pass in the House. And according to the squad, that's the reason why they said they did not force the vote, because it was not going to pass. But it's okay for them to force, to push other measures and other policies that are also not going to pass. Why didn't they do this when the Democrats had the majority in the House? And that's why some people will say, is this performative? Why didn't they do this back then? Why did they wait until the Republicans had the majority and try to pass all these type of progressive policies, which they know damn well is going to be dead in the water and it's not even going to make it to the Senate? Why didn't they put those measures forth when the Democrats had the majority and Nancy Pelosi was speaker? That's why people say it's performative.
we over audit the poor and we under audit the rich. So what this act is saying is, at least 30% of these guys have to get audited at a minimum, right? So they're asking for the bare minimum there, if you ask me.
Now let's move on to what Bernie Sanders is proposing. He wants to increase the federal minimum wage, which still stands at $7.25. He wants to increase it to $17 an hour. And look, there are some states that have already, like California, for instance, has raised the minimum wage and it's definitely higher in California compared to other states. But the point of raising the federal minimum wage to $17 an hour is that it increases the wages all across the board. It lifts all wages, so it makes a lot of sense. The question is, will that legislation pass? He proposed.
No, it won't. And Bernie knows it's not going to pass. Remember, just like Bernie decided not to bring the bill in reference to Yemen for them to pull out of Yemen, he decided last minute not to bring it to the floor for a vote because Joe Biden had already told him, don't do it, it's not going to pass. And Bernie knows this isn't going to pass either. This is just a way to show, listen, my progressive base, see, I'm still trying to do these progressive things that I told you about, even though I'm supporting Joe Biden, who does not approve of these things that we're trying to do. This is just a way to show them, like, look, I'm still trying to do something. They didn't agree to pass $15 minimum wage in the Senate. So I'm supposed to believe magically they're going to approve 17? I don't think that's going to happen.
It as a United States Senator, of course, and Representative Bobby Scott is also involved in co-authoring and sponsoring this bill. And the bill would raise the federal minimum wage from $7.25 to $17 per hour by 2028. So it wouldn't be an immediate increase in the minimum wage.
And by 2028, $17 an hour isn't going to be worth much a damn. Like, it's just, these are some of the things I really just don't understand. This makes me feel some type of way, because if you can just immediately give billions of dollars to Ukraine, you can just immediately go ahead and make that minimum wage $17 an hour and not have to over a period of time. I am wondering, and you guys tell me what you think of this. I'm honestly wondering if it is better off for the states to do this on their own, for the states to have a minimum wage. What do you think of that? And I say this because Massachusetts, we passed $15 minimum wage years ago. But what if every state in this country had their own required minimum wage, so that regardless if the federal government increases the minimum wage or not, the state has a minimum? Just something to think about. We got to start thinking outside the box, Maybe it could work, maybe it won't work. I don't know. But I know here in Massachusetts, we passed $15 minimum wage years ago. And so that's why I'm saying when they did that fight for 15, they were already like 4 years late. I don't know, man.
So let's get to the fun part now. Is this real, or is this just theater from progressives?
Well, I like it. And so is it the best they can do? No, not at all. And I'll get into in a little bit what they could have actually done to get some of this stuff passed. But I was worried they were doing absolutely nothing. And so what are we? This is July now? I mean, for 6-7 months, nothing proposed, no fight. So now that I'm seeing finally they propose something, I'll take it. I know the bar is super low, but even if it's a rhetorical fight rather than a legislative fight, because the Republicans are going to block at least the wealth tax for sure, right? Well, at least you're bringing attention to the cause and you're showing where you stand. Now, of course, Anna's going to be right when she says when push came to shove and they actually could have gotten some of these things done, especially the minimum wage, they chose not to fight. And so now this is not going to work at this point. By the way, it can. The minimum wage one can.
Yeah, I think that has. Look, I don't think the minimum wage is going to pass. I don't think that anyone is even going to fight to ensure that it passes, right? There's not going to be any pressure applied. And besides which, like, we're dealing with. Look, my biggest issue with this is that it is performative, and everyone involved knows it's performative, okay? And people want cookies for proposing legislation that A, they know has no chance of passing, B, they have no strategy in place to have it pass or attempt to get it passed.
Or no plan B. They don't have a backup plan when these things don't pass. What should the backup plan be? Hit the streets. Do you see the squad? Do you see them contact or tweet out and say, okay, guys, they shut this down. They're denying you a living wage. It's time to hit the streets. Do you see them doing that? They ain't even got to organize the protest. All they got to do is tweet about it. and people will organize on their own. But that should be the plan B. Even Bernie Sanders said, yes, we need Medicare for all. We got to fight for it, but we're also going to need thousands of people in the streets. So that's why I said, when we had those marches for Medicare for all in over 50 cities across this country, we listened to that and we went out to the streets. But you guys are the ones who didn't show up. Bernie and the squad, you were the ones who did not show up. We were there. So for me, it's just, guys, we got to get this done in the States. Like, I'm sorry, but I'm so tired of the fact that it's been 14 years? How many years? 14 years since the minimum wage has been increased on the federal level. Like, why are we letting them play around with us like this? We got to get this shit done in the States. It's not just Massachusetts. California has done it. I think New York also increased the minimum wage. Why are we waiting on them? Let me go on here. We have a little bit more here. We get to the other Bernie part.
And when you look at the proposal here compared to what they were doing when Democrats had a majority in the House of Representatives, it gives you a sense of like how many people, aside from the co-authors, right? How many Democrats, knowing full well that there's no chance that this is gonna pass, sign on to legislation like this so they can get the cookies?
Oh, for sure.
Right.
But there's two things that come out of things that are performative in politics. One is you want to get cookies for not actually doing anything, but pretending you're doing something.
Exactly, and I'm sick of that.
And that's Anna's main point, and that is 90% of what happens in Washington, right? But there's a second reason for doing things that are quote unquote performative. So you draw attention to it. Once you draw attention to it, then you actually fight for it. So the question is, are they going to fight for it?
Define fight. Define that. What is fighting for it? Is fighting for it, like fighting for it legislatively? Okay, let's say it don't pass, which I don't think it will. Let's say it don't pass. What do you do then to fight? You got to hit the streets. And that's the part that they don't do. So that's the piece to me that's just like, it's a no-brainer to me.
So for example, if during the Build Back Better negotiations, they had fought tooth and nail for $15 minimum wage and they lost, and then they come back and do this, I go, oh, that's fantastic. You can't argue with that because they're trying as hard as they can to get it into legislation. They're using their power, and then they're being performative in a good way because they're drawing attention to it again and then fighting for it again. But in this case, they didn't fight for it the first time when they had every opportunity to. So in a best case scenario, this is Bernie being Johnny come lately on his own proposal, right? He's the one that highlighted $15 minimum wage in the first place, right? And in a worst case scenario, it's the Just Democrats in the House playing patty cakes when they got their ass handed to them in the actual negotiations, and they chose not to fight, they chose not to use their power, and so this is just marketing. So those are both possibilities. And we're always constructive here. So I'm gonna tell you one thing they could do and then I would ask you, Anna, if they did this, would you then say it's not performative and it's real? So if I'm Bernie, okay, you propose it. Well, it's not gonna pass because 8 Democrats voted against it last time in the Senate, let alone every Republican being opposed to it. So if you just propose it and then go home, well then I gotta be honest, it was useless. Anna wins the debate, okay? But if you propose it and then you go, okay, here's the 8 Democrats that voted against a minimum wage last time. Why did they do that? 2 of them are in Delaware. Delaware is a very blue state. Hey, voters of Delaware, you should vote these guys out.
Delaware is a credit card state, just FYI. But yeah, those people should be removed from office.
Bernie, you gonna do that? Because that would create tons of attention and use that attention to notice, hey, why are Democrats who pretend to be in favor of the minimum wage actually against it? They voted against it, both Carper and Coons did. 8 different Democrats did. Okay, so if you shame them, then we would have an actual national conversation because CNN would love Democrat on Democrat fighting, but you're doing it for the right reasons to actually get a policy changed. You get the Democrats on board and then you put pressure on the purple district Republicans in the House. You only need a couple of their votes. So I can show you an exact roadmap for how to get this done. Is Bernie gonna do it? He's your best chance, and the answer is very, 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 very unlikely. because he does not like to upset his Democratic colleagues.
Right, you have to use carrots and sticks. And the only time I see anyone in the Democratic Party using sticks is when corporate Democrats use sticks against progressive Democrats, which is why, look, she's the most notable. That's why she gets talked about the most. And she's made a lot of missteps, just keeping it real. Like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I mean, the sticks used by corporate Democrats toward her worked perfectly to the point. I mean, she voted in favor of Congress intervening to stop the rail workers from going on strike. She voted against the rail workers in that case.
No, I know. Believe me.
So like, I'm not interested. Listen, I am not interested in creating opportunities for corporate Democrats to sign on to let progress.
I think we need to stop calling them. I think they need to stop saying it in a way as if the corporate Democrats are separate from the squad. I mean, the squad votes along with the corporate Democrats, even when it's on policies that they're not supposed to do that. They're all together. They're all corrupt. They're all in the same team. You know, I mean, it's like if you played sports, like I played sports, like if you played sports, it's like my team wasn't separate. It wasn't like we had like, here's the basketball team, and then like 5 of you guys have your own team, and then here's the rest of the team. No, at the end of the day, we were all one team. And in order for us to win, we had to move together. And that's what they doing. They moving together with them. So, I mean, it's just, I mean, at this point, I mean, it really isn't that much of a difference.
Progressive legislation and pretend like they support that progressive legislation, knowing full well that because of the House Freedom Caucus and because of Republicans having control of the House of Representatives, it's never gonna pass. It's never gonna pass, but they want the cookies, they want the kudos. I'm not interested in the kudos, and I'm not interested in dealing with a party that, unlike the Republican Party, gotta keep it real, is so scared of any infighting, so scared of having to hold anyone accountable within their own party.
100%.
If there's no accountability and if there's no strategy, that's the main thing here. There's no strategy to get the actual proposals passed, then what are we having a conversation about?
Yeah, so.
Don't ask me, this was your guy, this was y'all's strategy. Like seriously, and then there was no plan B with that. Like when they started Justice Democrats, there was no plan B as to what would be the next steps once those candidates won. And from what I understand, it seems like once they got into Congress, like that was pretty much it. There was no more communication. They stopped going on to independent media like after they won, like there was no next step. So this whole strategy issue, especially if we're talking about plan B, it's not just an issue when it comes to the squad and Bernie Sanders, it's also an issue with the progressive media apparatus. You see how they go together? Where they get this from? Where they get this strategy issue from? Strategy.
Last two things here. One is important for me, and one's one devastating one for Anna. So performative can work. Remember when Cori Bush sat on the Capitol steps to make sure that they did not end the moratorium on the rent during COVID, and she won on that, at least for a period of time. Why?
That was already approved though, and Cenk knows that. They had already approved it.
Because she brought attention to it, and she embarrassed Biden, and Biden didn't want to be embarrassed, so he gave in. That's when performative is awesome. That's why I don't foreclose this as being a good thing. I think it could be a good thing. On the other hand, how much did they cave on $15 minimum wage when they could have fought? It's not theoretical, guys. There's actual facts. Even after they lost in the first COVID relief bill, while barely fighting, and by the way, the Young Turks audience had to shame Bernie Sanders into proposing it as an amendment. He was just gonna let Schumer take it out of the bill. That's just a fact. And by the way, Bernie Sanders won't come on any progressive shows anymore. I don't know, maybe he'll go on ones that promise him softballs. But he goes on Bill Maher, he goes on mainstream media shows, but he won't come on here because he knows we're gonna ask him, so what are you gonna do to pass it, Bernie? Is this just marketing? Or
that part right there, Bernie Sanders, listen to this, because I can't disagree with Cenk here. I'm surprised he said this, but I'm glad he said it.
Even after they lost in the first COVID relief bill, while barely fighting, and by the way, the Young Turks audience had to shame Bernie Sanders into proposing it as an amendment. He was just going to let Schumer take it out of the bill. That's just a fact. And by the way, Bernie Sanders won't come on any progressive shows anymore. I don't know, maybe.
Nope. Bernie Sanders don't come on progressive media. Bernie Sanders don't go on to independent media anymore. The last independent media appearance he made was when he went on to Crystal Kyle and Friends, and he was only willing to do the interview if Kyle was not a part of the interview. And let me tell you, you got to be some kind of a, because that would not work on me. Because if you tell me, like if I had a co-host and you tell me the only way you're going to come on is if my co-host is not present, I would have just told you, well, I guess we're not doing the interview then. But no, they had to got to get those clicks. Because I'll be damned if somebody tell me that my co-host can't be present. How are you going to go into someone else's show and start calling shots? That right there should have told people exactly who Bernie Sanders really was. But he's right. And I'm glad he said that. Bernie Sanders don't go on to progressive media no more, independent media no more. Bernie Sanders act like he don't even know who you guys are. And a lot of you that started your shows during the Bernie movement spent years kissing Bernie Sanders' ass. And now Bernie pretends like he don't even know who you are. Bernie be in the back like, Kyle who? Crystal who? TYT who? Humanist Report who? He don't even know you guys. As many times as I sat down and watched these shows during Bernie's campaigns, there wasn't a day that went by that I didn't hear a story about Bernie where they were trying to get you to go out and support Bernie and they were praising Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders lost in 2020. Bernie Sanders lost in 2016. But after Bernie lost in 2020, Bernie packed up his bag and pretended like you guys did not exist. That is a kick in the face. And you see the squad followed that exact same playbook. After they got in, they didn't know you. Where's AOC been since she went on Jimmy Dore's show and Glenn Greenwald's show when she was running? Where's she been? She went on to The Lever on David Sirota's show, and David Sirota didn't even press her and push her. That's why she went on that show. That's a damn shame. Elizabeth Warren came on TYT. Bernie can't come on TYT. They used you, like I said, they need the media apparatus to support them and back them when they're running for office. But once they get in, they ain't got nothing for you either. He walked away from his movement, and when he walked away from that movement, he walked away from independent media as well. If I'm wrong, then prove me wrong. Let me know the next time you see Bernie Sanders on progressive media.
He'll go on ones that promise him softballs. But he goes on Bill Maher, he goes on mainstream media shows, but he won't come on here because he knows we're gonna ask him, so what are you gonna do to pass it, Bernie? Is this just marketing or do you actually mean it? So last thing is, okay, they lost on COVID relief bill, but Chuck Schumer said something unprecedented. And he said it to The Intercept. The article's public, you could all see it. Ryan Grim interviewed him, and Chuck Schumer said, I will put $15 minimum wage in every bill going forward. That's a golden opportunity, golden. That's when progressives should step up and go, I agree with Chuck Schumer. It should go in every bill going forward, and we're not gonna vote for any of these bills unless it's got $15 minimum wage, and we have our beautiful ally Chuck Schumer with us. Now, why did Chuck Schumer do that? Because he was worried that AOC was gonna run against him in that Senate seat. But they took that power and leverage and they flushed it down the toilet. Not one progressive asked Chuck Schumer to ever put it in a bill again. That's a negligence and dereliction of duty beyond imagination. It breaks my heart to tell you that, but that's what happened. These guys, they don't know politics at all. So it's just incredibly dispiriting to see this happen. So
I'm sorry, but that's what you wanted. When you started Justice Democrats, that's exactly what you wanted. You were looking for people that had no experience in politics, although I would argue Ayanna Pressley did because she was city councilor here in Boston. But you wanted people that had no experience in politics, and that's what you got. Now you got people who got no experience in politics, but then in turn, you are supposed to teach them about politics. Seems like to me, the teaching part didn't happen. That's exactly what you asked for, Cenk. And sorry, but the ones who have been there since 2018, they've been there long enough to understand how politics works now. It just is what it is.
But by the way, to Bernie and to the Justice Democrats, I know you mean well. I'm not questioning your intent at all. So prove us wrong. Fight for these. The wealth tax is very, very difficult, but the minimum wage is incredibly popular.
How do you know that they mean well? How do you know they mean well? When's the last time any of them have been on TYT and had this conversation with Cenk or Anna? When's the last time? How do you know that they mean well? You know, it's just,
All you have to do is fight. Prove us wrong, fight. But my guess is Anna's right, you won't. It's just marketing.
And it's not, look, it's not aimless fighting, right? It's strategy. Develop a strategy. I don't even know if these people talk to one another.
No, that's why I mentioned the thing about Bernie not coming on.
Well, we know they don't talk to you. We know they're not talking to you guys. It's just, I don't, let me run this back because he was saying something else about Bernie. I'm sorry.
Anna's right, you won't. It's just marketing.
And it's not, look, it's not aimless fighting, right? It's strategy. Develop a strategy. I don't even know if these people talk to one another.
No, that's why I mentioned the thing about Bernie not coming on. I don't care about guests. Guests don't do well, honestly, in our version of ratings. So it hurts us to have guests on, but we do it so you guys can learn. So, but if the reason I mention it is because we would ask Bernie, what's your plan, brother? And no one else in media ever asked that. And he doesn't, if he's got a plan, execute it, prove us wrong, humiliate us. Get it passed, and we'll love you forever. We'll apologize profusely and say you're the world's greatest politician. But you know what you have to do to pass it. You have to aggressively, not mildly, not go on CNN and just say it once. You have to aggressively challenge your Democratic colleagues, and you will not do it under penalty of law. That's why nothing ever passes that's progressive. Thanks for watching The Young Turks.
Well, I'm just going to say this. At this point, I don't understand the point of Bernie Sanders even being in the Senate anymore. I really don't, because it's true. They're not going to fight. They just don't fight. They roll over. They're milquetoast. I just don't understand the point of him being there. At this point, Bernie Sanders will be better off just retiring. That's how I feel. But to me, it's just like I said before, they found out if they want to keep their seats that they have to go along with Democrat leadership. And if they disagree with Democrat leadership, there goes their seats. That's what happened to Cynthia McKinney, and that's what happened to Dennis Kucinich. They'll get rid of you. They'll get rid of you. They'll get you out. But it's true. That's why a lot of people well, no, candidates come onto this show. You don't really see politicians. Ro Khanna came on here. Other than that, candidates will come on, but politicians, for the most part, don't make their way onto this show. Because, and part of it is because, I do ask, what's the plan? And when you ask that question, what's the plan? They don't usually have an answer. There usually is no plan. So it's true. Bernie goes on to the shows that don't ask him. Cenk said people don't ask him what his plan is, right? Okay, so my response to Cenk would be, that's why Bernie goes on to those shows, because they're not asking him that. And they don't ask him that because they want to continue bringing him on. I just can't believe this is the same person that said we're going to start a revolution across this country. Man. Thank you for the super chat, Dante. Thank you, Sabs. God bless. Keep speaking the truth no matter how much the smear merchants eventually go after you. Yeah, people smear me a lot, and it's actually kind of stupid because it gives me more attention. You're telling people, they tell people about this channel that didn't even know this channel existed. Someone came in one time in the chat and they said, I found out about you because someone was smearing you on their show. And I was like, okay, welcome. know what to tell people. I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Roger. It's a mess out there, guys. It is a mess out there. Thanks so much, Roger. Cenk and Anna are millionaires living in a CBI state for amendments, complaining about what's not happening in DC. No, the question is, Cenk, are you going to fight for it? Nina, you too. Running for office while living in a CBI, Ohio, for amendments is really an exercise in their own ego. Run those initiative amendments, outlaw private equity from owning housing, CalCare, California State Public Bank. Bernie never been on indie media. Bernie was on, I thought Bernie was on TYT before, back in the day. But I will say something I was going to add, that we got to get this done through the states. Like, I'm sorry, but and Roger's right. They live right in California, which is a ballot initiative state. And I'm just telling you, it is what it is. But when it comes to this issue with the minimum wage, the wealth tax, we passed that here in Massachusetts, and it's already doing good things in reference to feeding the kids. So I'm here to tell you, when it comes to this minimum wage thing, if it has not been done in your state, fight for that shit in your state. How many states now in the US have $15 minimum wage past it? I'm trying to think. I know Massachusetts, California, and New York, I believe. I feel like there's others. Florida. So I want to tell y'all, people can continue to scream and yell at the camera and complain about what's not getting done in DC, but at the same time, tell people to get some of these things you can get done in the States. I don't know. Yeah, that's right. DG Daniels, Florida passed a minimum wage increase. That's right. We have another one. Washington. Okay. Thank you, Chastity. Yeah, he was on TYT twice. I thought he was on there before. I don't know, man. Get it done through the states. Get it done through the states. We could start a song. I could contact Jesse Jet and ask Jesse Jet if he can make a song called Get It Done Through the States. Get it done through the states. Get it done through the states. Make it kind of trendy. I know, Rick. I hear you. You can't even live on $15 anymore, Sabby. I hear you. I know. It's 14 years without increasing the minimum wage. That's insane. All right, guys, that's it for me tonight. Have a good weekend. I'll be back on Sunday. But other than that, if you don't have any plans this weekend or you're looking for something to do this weekend, I recommend going to the movies and see Oppenheimer. I saw it Wednesday night. I'll talk a little bit about it on Sunday. I'm past my time, but I'll mention a little bit about it on Sunday about what I thought about the movie. But I think it was really good. But yeah, go check out Oppenheimer. All right, guys. Other than that, I am out. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.